Emmett versus Murphy. Looking forward to this main event. Are there any other fights in this card besides the main event and co-main event?
Yeah, on the prelims, Davy Grant is fighting Daniel Santos. That's a bantamweight matchup. That's good. That's a good matchup. And then Brad Tavares versus Gerald Meerschaert is on the undercard. And Kennedy and Nzechukwu versus Martin Buday is also on the undercard. So pretty good fight night. Let's get into this co-main event. Pat Sabatini versus Joanderson Brito.
Joanderson Brito, 17-4-1, 8 KOs, 7 subs, 2 decisions, 5-2 in the UFC. Pat Sabatini is 19-5, 2 KOs, 12 subs, 5 decisions, 6-2 in the UFC. So pretty evenly matched records here. When I see this kind of evenly matched, I think we're probably looking at decision. I'm going to go Sabatini. Decision.
Pat Sabatini, great grappler, tough guy, but I think Brito's probably the favorite. He can probably match Pat's grappling, and he has a clear advantage on the feet. He was also beating Diego Lopez the first 2 rounds of their Dana White Contender Series fight before poking him in the eye early in the third, and they had to stop the fight. So I think Brito puts it on Sabatini early on. I'm going to say round 1 TKO for Brito.
Brito is me. I got to do a little more Brito homework.
Main event, Josh Emmett versus Lerone Murphy. This is very interesting matchup.
Yeah, Murphy undefeated, 15-0-1, 7 KOs, 8 decisions. He's 6-0-1 in the UFC. His first fight in the UFC was a draw. He's had performance night once, fight night once. Josh Emmett, 19-4, 7 KOs, 2 subs, 10 decisions. He's 10-4 in the UFC. All losses have been to tough competition. Only time he's been finished was he was choked out by Yair Rodriguez and knocked out by Jeremy Stevens. In a fight, I think he learned a lot about himself. He's coming off a very vicious knockout win over Bryce Mitchell, one of the biggest, nastiest knockouts you'll ever want to see. Performance of the night twice, fight night 3 times, most knockdowns in UFC featherweight division history. So this is a guy who can grapple too. This is definitely going to be Murphy's toughest test.
Oh yeah,
at this point. I'll go Murphy. I'll say that he's undefeated. He's going to find a way to win, but we're going to find out what that chin is made of. You know, there's a good chance he gets knocked out. But since I've already gone Sabatini, let me just go Murphy, and we'll see how it works out. Murphy by decision.
It's wild to me that Bryce Mitchell has fought, and since his fight with Josh Emmett, and Josh Emmett hasn't fought, just based on how terrible that knockout was. And also, Josh Emmett needs better management, because he should have been capitalizing off that knockout immediately and trying to catapult himself into something. But anyway, that has nothing to do with this fight, but I just wanted to mention that. But
no, but it's interesting. Like, he's been off this long, and then he gets an undefeated guy that isn't big name value.
Yeah, exactly. This doesn't immediately get him to a title shot. When you knock out somebody and they're twitching on the ground like that, that should count for 2 knockout fights or whatever, you know? So anyway, back to this fight. If we're comparing strength of schedule, yes, Lerone is undefeated, and he's faced some good guys, including Dan Ige. He just beat Dan Ige. But Josh has faced world-class guys, like you mentioned. Not always winning those fights, but the experience in the cage is amazing. You know, that experience is intangible for sure. So after saying that, I'm with you. I'm still picking Murphy. Josh has the most power at featherweight outside maybe the champion, but I would still probably pick Emmett punch for punch. Most likely, I just think that Murphy is so slick and he's so fast. He's going to be able to avoid those big overhand shots that Josh likes to land. So I'm going to pick Lerone Murphy by decision as well.
Okay.